All right, guys, we are live. So I'm just going to be waiting for everyone to join us. Want to make sure that we get as most people as possible before we get started. So it is scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern time. So we do have a couple of people here. So hi, Jorge, Riley. I see Shave has been here for a while now. So we have 10 people. So we'll give it a couple of minutes before we get started. I want to take the time to thank everybody for joining us. You've made the decision to be here. So thank you for your time, for sharing this space with us. If you haven't heard about us, my name's Sandra Velosa, and I'm CEO of Velosa Immigration. My background is I studied political science in the University of Toronto, worked in non-for-profit for a while, then did some business development, and then I decided to start my own business working with immigration. It's been a passion of mine. My parents immigrated from Colombia to the United States and then Canada. So I take this very, very personal. With me is Hernan. He's my colleague and also an immigration consultant. So I'll give you the time to introduce yourself, Hernan, tell people a little bit about yourself, what you focus on, and what we're going to be discussing today.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sandra. I appreciate the intro. My name is Hernan Del Vecchio. I am originally from Argentina, but same way as Sandra, I immigrated to Canada like 14, 15 years ago now. I first came because I was really attracted to the beauty of Canada, which I think is something that most of us share. But then I focused on studying. So I did my master's degree in Canada at the University of Queen's University, actually, in Ontario. I studied biotechnology, biology, molecular biology, a mixture of all that. And I worked actually in science and in the pharmaceutical industry for, I would say, 7 years almost. And throughout all that, as an immigrant, you always have this thought at the back of your head, like, oh, I really want to stay in this country and I want to stay permanently. So the good thing was, like when you get involved in all that, it becomes a passion. Like, at least for me, it was that way. So like, I really got interested in how the immigration system in Canada worked. And that was kind of like a hobby for me. Like I really, helped a lot of people doing that. And when the opportunity came, I, seized the opportunity of actually turning that into a way of living and also practicing it professionally. So I've been an immigration consultant since 2020. And like, I'm very, very excited to be sharing with you guys this program that we're going to be talking about. I actually specialize in this particular stream. Well, I mean, the program itself from the province of British Columbia, which has many streams actually, to transition to permanent residence. So I really hope that whatever we're going to discuss today, if you're interested in, immigrating to Canada through BC, I think this is the right place at the right time to be.
Of course. So with shorter ado, I think we'll get started. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. So we have 16 people watching us. So thank you everyone who's here. We try to really summarize this for you guys. As you know, when you try to navigate the immigration website, it can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of information. People get very confused. You don't really know how to apply all of the data to yourself. You don't know if you're going to meet the qualifications, if you meet the requirements or not. This is very short. The idea is for you guys to get a gist of how the program works, how to calculate your points. But if you want for us to evaluate you on a case-by-case basis, then we can definitely sit with you guys, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. But keep in mind that this is very short and very condensed, taking into consideration that the program itself has a lot of details and a lot of qualifications that you have to take into consideration before applying. So I'll let Hernan get started. And if you guys have any questions, just make sure you put them in the comment box. I'll try to answer them as he speaks. And if I feel like maybe the same question is being asked, what we'll do is we'll have some time at the end to answer all of your questions. As long as they're very general, we're not sharing any personal information, we're more than welcome to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sandra. So yeah, like I actually second that what you said. What we're going to be covering today in the webinar is basically like an overview of what the program, the British Columbia Provincial Nominee Program is. And of course, like in 1 hour, we can't really go into all the details, like, the deepest of the deep details. So we're just going to have to give you like a glance of everything that we're going to be talking about. But at the end of the day, the idea is that you get the main message of what this is in, pointing to, so that you can understand and know whether this applies to you. And if it does, if you want to use it to actually become a permanent resident in Canada through the program, okay? So I understand that everybody right now is like seeing the presentation. So just gonna move ahead and give you a little bit of an index of what we're gonna be talking about today, so that you have a better idea of the sequence of what is going to be shared. So first of all, I'm just gonna give a brief overview of who we are, which we kind of like have already, but so that you understand exactly what kind of services we provide. And then we're gonna like delve deeper into what the BC-PNP is, like the program itself. We're gonna describe the categories, and those categories are the skilled worker, the entry level and semi-skilled, the international graduates, and within the skilled worker, there is a specific subcategory called tech stream that many of you probably have heard. So we're gonna like touch a little bit on that, and finally, we're going to discuss or do like a simulation of how we calculate the score for a specific, profile for someone, for a potential candidate, I would say. Okay, so with no more preambles, let's just jump into who we are. Oh, I think, yeah, that one was actually
already for sure.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah, like we switched around. Yeah, no worries. That's okay, guys. I think we're just gonna jump into the BC-PNP, which is good, so that we don't, miss any of the things we have to share with you. So let's take a look at what the BC-PNP is. As I mentioned earlier, the BC-PNP stands for British Columbia Provincial Nominee Program. You might be wondering, like, what is a nominee or what is a nomination? So it's just, like language that the government of the province and the government of Canada as well uses in order to say, hey, we're just going to support somebody who wants to transition to permanent residence in Canada through some economic stream within the province. And we're going to say, like, that person is useful for the province economically speaking. So from a like a production of like good or services and paying taxes perspective. And we're going to tell the federal government, so the government in Ottawa, this person is good, so we just want this person to remain in Canada and in turn remain in the province in BC indefinitely, permanently. Okay, so in other words, it's a combination, it's a collaboration between the provincial government and the government of the country, the government, the federal government, so that you can use the streams that they offer, which are the ones we're just going to see in a minute. And in that way, you can remain in Canada and in the province, okay? And in the whole process, like the applicant just gains permanent residence, which is the objective for the person, but at the same time, the province earns someone who will be producing, gaining money in the province and also paying taxes in the province. So it's a win-win scenario for both, like the applicant and the government of the province, and ultimately Canada as well. So the whole idea is that it can work like seamlessly as one side and the other side, so that everybody wins basically. And that was like the original idea of the program. This program has been around for quite a few years now. I think like probably more than 20 years now, but regardless of that, there has been some changes. I think, well, the changes coincided with the change of the National Occupation Classification transition from 2016 to 2021, which was November last year, okay, November 2022. So what we're going to be discussing and talking about today is a reflection of the latest updates on the program, okay? I say this because you may have heard of this maybe like 2, 3, 4 years ago, and the way that calculation of points was done was different, and where the points came from were also different. So we're going to touch on all that later on when we do the simulation of the scores, but right now I just want you to keep that in mind, okay? So what is important here, as I was saying before, is that like many other provincial nominee programs, not only the one in BC, but the ones in other provinces and territories as well in Canada, they basically have two different stages, two different like steps that you have to follow. The first one is where you deal with the provincial government. So let's imagine for a second that you are someone who is already in Canada and living and working in the province of British Columbia, okay? Either you're in Vancouver, in Victoria, you're up north, you are like in the Okanagan Valley, it doesn't matter where you are, but you are residing in the province of British Columbia. So you first deal with the provincial government. What does that mean? It means you have to, like, first of all, meet the requirements that we're going to see in a minute. And if you do, you submit an application to the provincial government, and the provincial government will say, hey, you're eligible. And because you had the, a specific score, we invited you to apply, and your application went through successfully, you're approved. When that approval comes, that means that you will be nominated, as I was just referring to a second ago. When that nomination comes, that's like the support, like you have the back from the provincial government that then says to the federal government, hey, this person has met all the requirements and has been successful in obtaining this approval from us, so that they can stay in the province of British Columbia and they can transition to become permanent residents of Canada, okay? So obviously the second step is this other evaluation or analysis or assessment from the federal government that says, okay, you have like fulfilled, or you have met all the requirements. From the provincial government that looks at the, let's say, business side of this, or like how much, salary you're earning, how many years of experience you have, what is your language proficiency, et cetera. But then the federal government will look at different things, which are the admissibility like features, like, for example, criminal admissibility and medical admissibility. So all in all, once you successfully pass the first stage and the second stage with the the federal government as well, all in all, you will have finished the process and you will be given the status of permanent residents of Canada. Okay, so like that's just in a nutshell, like in a very short way of explaining how the process actually works. So that also has to do with the way that the actual application happens, because for many programs, especially the ones that only are related to the federal government, for example, Express Entry, which is the most famous one, most of the times you don't need to be in a employer-employee relationship. Okay, you can accumulate work experience, but then once you have that work experience, you can apply and you're independent from the kind of job that you have, or even if you have a job at the time, like thinking about Canadian Experience Class, for example. But in the provincial nominee program, the BC one at least, you must have a relationship with an employer in BC. So that's where the whole mechanics of this program comes into, because in order for you to be contributing like economically to the province, you have to be employed and you have to be making a certain salary a year, and you have to have like certain language skills that allow you to actually do your job, et cetera, et cetera. So like all the components of the application actually require this relationship between employee and employer. So all that to say that in this application, it's not just an application of the main applicant himself, it's an application of both the employee, which will be the applicant in this case, but also the employer, okay? Something important here that, for a lot of people, it may become like an area of concern is, like, does the employer actually have to support me economically? Like, it depends on how you see it. Of course, like you must have like an employment contract, and you must be earning a salary in order to accumulate and accrue the points that you need for reaching the score needed to be invited into the program. And we're going to see that in the simulation of the score calculation. But in terms of like, does the employee have to pay anything in particular for the process? Not really. Like each case is different, and of course, like we would have to analyze specifically each one of them. But like overall, the employer only has to support you with paperwork. Okay, so it has to prove that you have a real job and that you have, like the company that you're working for is a real company and it's a legitimate company, and that they're having business in BC, which they pay taxes for, et cetera, et cetera. So all in all, it's not, so much about the economic investment that the employer has to do. It's more about the paperwork that they must have, properly given to you as the main applicant, so that you can use that in the application. Okay, so just to summarize this and not to make it confusing for any of you, this is an application that both parties have to take part in. Okay, so it's the main applicant. Most of the things will come from the main applicant, which is, the employee in this case, but some of the things will come from the employer, and the employer himself will have to sign some forms and will have to produce some paperwork from the actual company, so that the whole application package can be there. So that's something that you must take into account, because if you're going to apply for this, the first thing that I always recommend my clients is you have to ask the employer if the employer will support you in this. This is something that you can't just, take for granted and say, hey, I'm going to do it. But then the employer may say, hey, no, we're not going to support you with this. So the first thing before even considering the program is to have a word with the employer and say, will you be able to do this? Or will you be willing to support me in this? So that's a very important aspect of the program, and also something different from what, many of you may know from the federal programs like Express Entry. Okay, so let's just take a look at the different categories. And there are actually, I think, at least one or two more categories that we're not going to be covering today, because they're not the most common ones or the popular ones. So these three ones that we're going to present today and we're going to look into in more detail are the ones that most people utilize in the BC-PNP. Okay, so you may have heard about these ones. The first one is the skilled worker. And the skilled worker, as I mentioned briefly earlier, it includes it's not a subcategory. It's like a modification of the same skilled worker BC-PNP, but for certain occupations, which are a very specific list that the government provides. They are considered to be part of this BC-PNP tech approach, which receive special treatment because they are in-demand occupations, and also it's an industry. The tech industry is something that the government of BC values very much and wants to expand within the province. So you have the BC-PNP skilled worker with the modification of the BC-PNP tech. The second category would be the international student, for the many students, international students, obviously, that choose Canada and particularly BC to actually get a degree or a diploma and further their studies. Of course, there is a pathway for them to utilize the BC-PNP to become permanent residents. And the final, which is a very popular one as well among people who don't have a skilled job, because needless to say, the first and the second category, you may have guessed by now that you must have a specific qualified job, and that job needs to be a skilled job, which it's related to the way that the government classifies the different occupations, and within the national occupation classification must have a certain level so that they can be considered skilled. In the third category, the entry-level one, the name says it itself, you don't have to have a skilled job. It can be a semi-skilled or unskilled, if you want, position, occupation, but of course, it's not any occupation. It has to be a specific occupation, and we're going to look into the details when we see that specific category. Okay, so let's just jump into the first one, the skilled worker, because here is where I present to you the main requirements that an applicant must fulfill, must meet in order to be considered for this specific category. So first and foremost, as I was saying before, you must have a job offer, so an employment offer. Either you have the employment offer or you're already working for the employer in BC, okay? But in particular, that job offer must have certain characteristics. And the first one is that it must be full-time. In immigration, full-time is at least 30 hours a week. So you must be working for the employer in BC for at least 30 hours a week. It can be less, it can be 28 or 25. It has to be minimum 30. If you work more, fine, it's okay, but at least it has to be 30. And then this is something very important as well. The job offer has to be indeterminate. That means that you cannot utilize this with a contract. So if you have an employment contract that says you start on the 1st of January and you finish on the 31st of December, you have like a 1-year contract. That kind of offer of employment will not like go through the BC-PNP in this category, okay? It must be something where you are hired and you remain hired indefinitely until, you know, like either of the parties decide that it's no longer, right? But rather than that, the contract cannot say that it ends at a certain date. It has to be indeterminate, okay? So having said that, sorry, which is, I think, the most important part of the the offer of employment, I think the next important thing is the level of the occupation, right? Like, as we said, that it has to be skilled right now since November 2022, when the new National Occupation Classification version 2021 came into effect. We now have the tier, which is the one that defines the skill level of the occupation. So everything that is skilled has to have a tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, okay? So anything that is 3 or above is considered to be skilled. So if you're thinking of utilizing this particular category in the BC-PNP, you must have an offer of employment in an occupation that is considered at that level, okay? 0, 1, 2, or 3. It cannot be 4 or 5. It has to be 0, 1, 2, or 3. And of course, then you must be qualified to perform the duties of the position. For most people who use this category are people who are already working in BC in the occupation at that specific skill level, and the majority of them, you know, like they meet the duties, or, you know, like the qualifications to do the duties of the position because they're already working. Another thing that is crucial for this particular category is the fact that you must have at least 2 years of full-time or equivalent part-time, meaning like it's going to be more than 2 years if you count like part-time experience, but in total it has to make up for 24 months of full-time experience in the last 10 years. That experience could have been gained in Canada, so like in the actual occupation that the person has right now and is looking forward to using for the BC-PNP, or it can be previous experience either in Canada or abroad, or both, right? So like it can be a combination of that. Skilled obviously means that like the actual occupation must have been classified in those levels, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And the difference here, and we're gonna, you know, like compare that when we do the calculation of the score, is that the actual experience here can be in any occupation, okay? Any skilled occupation, but still any occupation. So let's say, for example, you're working as a cook. Cook is level 2 or level 3, depending chef or cooks, but it's a skilled position. And you have experience as an admin, like administrative personnel, like an office administrative personnel back in your country. Both of them are skilled, okay? So if you have 2 years at least of that admin experience in your country, it qualifies you from a like eligibility standpoint for the category. But of course, you can count that as related experience if your current occupation and the one from the job offer in BC is as a cook, all right? Because they're not related whatsoever. They're 2 different occupations. So that's a very important difference there, because a lot of people kind of confuse this and they say, hey, but I have 2 years of experience. Why doesn't that give me points for my score? Well, the one for the score is related work experience to the occupation of the job offer. Yeah, don't be afraid if you don't quite grasp it right now. We're going to see that when we do the calculation of the score, but that's something that you must bear in mind, because otherwise it can be confusing, okay? So let's say that you meet all this, and there are a couple of things here that I would like to reinforce, because this is absolutely crucial. Because of this, a lot of people actually believe that they might be eligible, and then they end up understanding or realizing that they're not. So 2 main things. The job offer must be full-time and indeterminate. It cannot be otherwise, okay? There is just one exception, and we're going to see it when we see the tech, where you can have a contract, but for the most part, all job offers for the BC-PNP must be full-time and indeterminate. And the other thing is that you must have those 24 months of work experience in any skill occupation within the last 10 years for eligibility purposes, not for scoring purposes. Okay, perfect. So I think this is, like, as we said earlier, we're just going to give you like a very overview of like the eligibility criteria and then the calculation of scores. There are a lot of like different variations in this when we apply this theoretical, if you will, like the way that the program like actually works in real life is a little bit different from what we see here. Okay, not different in the sense that how we apply it, but like each case has its own complexities, and of course we have to adapt it to it. So I will go back to what Sandra was saying earlier. I think it's crucial, if you're interested in this program, that you can have a consultation with either of us so that we know exactly, we can get to know your profile and understand exactly what the different circumstances in your particular case are, and apply that to whatever the program requests, right? Like what the actual eligibility criteria is and how that applies to you.
I think it would be a good time to, just sorry to cut you off really quickly, but
that's fine.
Just so they understand how complex this can be, because we actually have a current case right now, or Nine is working on a current case of somebody who, in the process of applying, had met everything, met all of the requirements, and then the employer, for whatever reason, was established in BC, and afterwards, it was the type of business structure that he had, I think, was established in BC, but then stopped business there and established himself in Alberta, and then was now looked at as a new business because just recently reestablished in BC, I believe, something along those lines. So sometimes you don't know this until you start looking at the paperwork, reviewing it. So you as the applicant may meet all the eligibility criteria, and the employer may believe to meet all the eligibility criteria, but until we actually look at the paperwork, revise it, then that's when we find out certain things, right? So it is important to have somebody really analyze your case, because again, in theory, you may check off all the boxes, but in reality, we want to make sure that both parties meet everything that is required in order for the application to be approved. Not to say that we can't process this, but it may cause delay, or it may cause you to have to wait some time in order for you to now meet the requirements. Right. I think that's where we're getting at. I'm going to allow you to continue, but just wanted to kind of simplify that and really highlight the fact that what you read online and then when you actually put it into practice may be very, very different.
Very different. No, I totally agree, Sandra, and I think that's an amazing clarification. And going back to what I was saying before, I think it's crucial when somebody, like they think that they might qualify for the program. I think not only it's important to see like all the requirements for the person himself, but also to like have a look at what the employer has and what the like the structure of the companies, because there are many things that sometimes we just sort of like overlook, and then you go back to understanding exactly how these things work. And the program, even though like the BC-PNP in itself is pretty flexible, for some things it can be very strict. So we have to make sure that we understand the whole like picture on both sides. Like most of the times we have more information from the applicant himself, because obviously it's the person that we're dealing with more often, right, as a client from us. But we also need to understand the employer. So I might even say that I think if it's the case, and if the employer is willing to, we can have the consultation sort of like together or like separate, but still like understanding exactly where the employer is coming from and the structure of the company, because that, as I was saying before, it's like it's a combined application of both. So like both need to be eligible, and both need to actually have everything that is needed in order for this to be successful. So great point, great clarification. Perfect. So I think that the next category that we talked about was the international student one, which obviously is a popular one as well. Many people from abroad come to BC to study, and they graduate and they say, okay, I just want to have a pathway, a way to actually become a PR through my studies. And the government, of course, understands and acknowledges that, and that's why they have created this particular stream for international students. So all in all, I think there are many things that actually share, that overlap with the skilled worker, but there are some things that are a little bit different. So first and foremost, and the obvious point, is that you must have studied in BC and you must have graduated successfully from a program in BC. So the thing here with this category in particular is more about the timing, okay? Because since you graduated in BC, you can utilize the category like past the 3 years since graduation, okay? So if you're going to use the BC-PNP international student, you must submit an application before 3 years after your graduation. So let's say you graduate in 2023, you can't use the BC-PNP in this category past 2026, okay? Because like after 3 years, it's just not considered anymore. That's an eligibility criteria. It's part of the program. That's how it, you know, like the rules are made, and you can't really change that. So you have to be aware of that. The other thing, and you know, like a slight difference from the skilled worker, is that for this particular stream, you cannot use any occupation that falls under tier skill level 0. Okay, so anything that is managerial, like upper managerial, or like, you know, all the C positions and things like that that starts with a 0 in the NOC code, or 00, those ones cannot be used here. So if you have something like that, obviously because of the salary expectations from such positions and the experience requirements as well for such positions, normally they tend to fit better under skilled worker and not so much under international students. So if you're going to use like a specific position for this category, you must do it under skill level 1, 2, or 3. It cannot be 0. Perfect. I think I have the next, yeah. So these are like the most relevant differences. And as I was saying, the first one is that one that you cannot use manager, supervisor levels, like tier skill level 0. Those ones are not there. And then something that is really important here that I didn't mention earlier is that when you graduate from a specific like educational institution in BC, you have to see if that institution is actually recognized by the province, right? By the government of BC as an eligible institution for utilizing with the BC-PNP, okay? Not all of them actually do. The Ministry of, I think it's the Ministry of Education, and obviously you have this information in the website from the BC-PNP. They list all the institutions that are actually accepted by the BC-PNP, and you must make sure that yours, the one that you graduated from, is like shows up there. Otherwise, it's just not possible to utilize the category. Okay, so that, and combined, as I was saying earlier, like, you know, you can use this past the 3 years from your graduation. Those 3 things are the main things here. But if we go back to what we were saying from the skilled worker, you still need to have your full-time indeterminate job offer, and something, yeah, like I'm not sure if I have it, probably not, but yeah, I'm just gonna mention it here. In this case, you don't need to show that you have the 2 full time, the 2 years, the 24 months of full-time experience abroad or in Canada. Okay, that was something that you needed for the BC-PNP skilled worker. For international students, you don't need that experience or that previous experience as a qualification like requirement. So you only need the indeterminate job offer and the fact that you graduated from an eligible institution in BC, and you're doing it within 3 years from graduation. Okay, if you have that, you're fine. You don't need the previous experience. Okay, so that's another category. And the thing here is that a lot of people who studied in BC sometimes have the question, hey, can I utilize my education? Because probably the education that they completed in BC is like 1 degree higher than whatever they had back in their home countries. And they say, okay, if I did, let's say, my master's in Canada, as we're going to see when we calculate the score, like the higher the education level, the more points that gives you. So they say, can I use my education in BC but not utilize this category? Absolutely, yes. Okay, like the fact that you graduated from a program in BC doesn't mean that you have to use the international student stream in the BC-PNP. Like if you have like a better profile that, you know, like fits better under skilled worker, definitely you can use the skilled worker. You don't have to use this one. This one is just meant for those people who basically, you know, like they want to take advantage of the category, and for the reason that, for example, they don't have that experience before the 24 months, and they wouldn't be able to use skilled worker, they can use this one. Okay, so it's a little bit more flexible in that sense, but it doesn't mean that the fact that you studied in BC means that you only can use this category. That's not the case. Okay, so just a clarification there, because this is a common question. Fine. So I think we can just jump into the last category. Well, like the one before last, we're going to just touch on the tech after this one. So what is the entry level and semi-skilled? This is also a very, very popular one. It has become very popular. This was launched probably like almost 10 years ago. I think the first round of this one was in 2014. And the government of the province basically realized that there were a lot of people that were missing out on doing the BC-PNP simply because their offer of employment was not in a skilled position. Okay, it wasn't any of the 0, 1, 2, 3 NOC level or tier level. So they said, we just want to make sure that our, you know, hospitality industry and food production industry doesn't suffer, you know, from the fact that a lot of people cannot transition to PR simply because their skill level of their occupations doesn't fall under a skill category, right? So they created this specific one, which, as I was saying, this is related specifically to tourism and hospitality and food processing. Okay, so there are only 29 eligible occupations. It can be any unskilled or semi-skilled occupation. It's a very restricted one. But of course, as I said, like they focus on hospitality. So the most common ones that you can find in the hospitality like industry, like bartender, like server, like dishwashers, all those ones are present here. So, you know, regarding that, BC has many areas in the province that are, you know, like their livelihood is based on tourism. It's really, really useful for those sectors, for those populations. So,
Hernan, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes. No, go ahead.
I'm getting a lot of questions. So I wanted to highlight a couple of things. One, you've actually lived in BC, for those that don't know, and I don't think you mentioned in the beginning. So a lot of people have this misconception that perhaps in order for you to gain permanent residence, that it needs to be a qualified job. And what I mean by qualified job is obviously high skilled, right? We're thinking maybe engineers, people in tech, but here we're looking at the entry level and semi-skilled stream, which specifically targets people in cleaning or perhaps people that work in casinos, etc. Something interesting that you mentioned at the beginning was that these provincial programs are meant to stimulate the province economy. So what the province is doing is looking at, okay, where is the need that we have in regards to workers? What industry do we need to focus to make sure that we are assisting, in a way, people that are coming here as temporary foreign workers to transition into PR. We're also helping employers to retain these staff members. So something interesting we see, and I mean, you can vouch for this, Whistler and other parts of the province actually hire a lot of temporary foreign workers, right? So just wanted to highlight that, because a lot of times people say, hey, it's nearly impossible to find work. Well, sometimes it's impossible because you're focusing on perhaps in the wrong industry. And what I mean by that is that you're focusing maybe in an industry that is not really high demand, as opposed to perhaps, hey, maybe if I don't want to say settle, but perhaps look a little bit deeper at where exactly is the need of in where I'm applying, maybe I'll increase my chances of actually getting a job offer. And I think that's important. So this is for everybody that's asking me, do we help in finding work? No, we're not a recruitment agency, but we do help in all legal matters. Once you have that job offer in place, we actually help our clients validate that the job offer is legitimate. So make sure that you are working with a reputable employer that's not charging you for an LMIA crazy prices like 40, 50K or whatnot. Also that there actually is a job for you, and that they're very transparent into what exactly you're going to be doing once you arrive in Canada. That's very important. But where I want to get at is perhaps if you start looking at jobs that are in demand that maybe not in your industry or your profession, but perhaps can lead from temporary residence to permanent residence. So something that BC has that I think is great is that they have this program, and we have a lot of people that come here under a working holiday if your country applies, that are working in hotels or casinos or restaurants. And because it's specifically in the hospitality industry that they're able to transition from temporary residence to PR. So just wanted to highlight that. And I mean, you've lived in BC, so
Right.
you know that this is where
Yeah.
BC really gets most of his how do I say this? Like there's so much tourism.
Manpower. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's important for people to really understand, well, what skills do I have and what province do I focus on when I'm looking for a
Right.
job, right? So we're going to be talking about tech. So if you're in the tech industry and you have those skills, look at provinces like BC, Ontario, even Alberta has a specific stream for people that have a background in tech. So want to make sure that we're applying to the right provinces so we maximize our possibilities of getting a job offer. And I think that's important, and sometimes that people are unaware of. So I wanted to mention that.
Totally. No. And I mean, like that's amazing. And also something that you said, which is I think very interesting to mark, is that for a lot of people, and especially young people, can use the International Experience Canada like a working holiday, for example, to come to BC, and then based on the experience that they get and the employment that they have, they can transition using the entry level of the BC-PNP. But in my experience as well, and working with like different hotel chains and other people in the Whistler area, for example, and I know it happens in other parts of the province as well. Like hotels tend to do like LMIAs. Like for those who don't know, like LMIAs is like a way of hiring a foreign national for Canadian employers, and they do it for like large number of people. So if you are someone from abroad who doesn't happen to be from a country that has the working holiday agreement with Canada, you can still look forward to finding a job in this industry, in the hospitality industry, in the area of Whistler or other parts of the touristic corridors in BC, based on that. Okay, so like there are chances to do that, and you can, as Sandra was saying, like you can come as a cleaning person or a dishwasher or like a bartender, something like that, and then you transition, and once you transition and you become a PR, then you have other possibilities. You don't have to remain in that specific position, but you can basically use that to contribute economically to the province, which is ultimately what the government wants, and at the same time get your status in Canada. So I think it's a win-win situation, and that's the main plan of the BC-PNP itself. All right, so just going back to this, as I was saying, and at the beginning, and obviously from the title, like the specific occupations that you have here cannot be skilled. So it's opposite, like completely opposite to what we're saying with the international student and skilled worker. Here it has to be levels 4 or 5, which are obviously non-skilled or unskilled in the National Occupation Classification. The main thing here, and this is something that everybody needs to be very aware of, is that once you start working in a position like this, and as I said, like it's one of those 29s, which are obviously listed in the website from the BC-PNP, you must remain working full-time for the employer, like a minimum of 9 months continuously, okay? It has to be consecutive. So let's say you start working for the BC employer as a cleaning person in a hotel in Whistler. You start in January next year. You have to be there with the employer full-time, meaning 30 hours a week minimum, uninterruptedly until September. In September, and pending that you meet the other eligibility requirements that we mentioned before, you will be able to be there. A lot of people ask me, what happens if I do, let's say it's the same occupation, in cleaning, and I do like 3 months with one employer, 3 months with the other employer, and 3 months with the other employer? Does that count? No, it doesn't. Okay, you must remain employed consecutively with the same employer for 9 months. What happens? Same thing. What happens if you take like a 2-month break, you go back to your country and then come back to Canada? It starts all over. You have to start counting the 9 months again. Okay. Why does the government do this? Basically, because they want to make sure that it's kind of like the pressure on both sides, the applicants, so like the employees and the employers, that they remain in the position as long as possible, okay? Because obviously, regarding the type of positions they are, and because the industry itself in hospitality and in places like Whistler, where there's a like a very high rate of change of people who live there. Like a lot of these positions tend to be very like they turn to change, and the rate of like people who like pass in the occupation can be very high. So they just try to make sure that the employer and the employee make the commitment to stay together for 9 months before they can move forward. So that means that ultimately, like the whole relationship, the employment relationship will last longer than if this specific requirement wasn't in place. Okay, so that's a very key point, because it's what distinguishes this particular category from the other two, apart of course from the skill level. Okay, so as I was saying, like we're just gonna go over like what basically is different from the other two. As I said, this is focused only on those 29 occupations in the hospitality and food processing sectors, nothing else. You cannot use any other skill apart from those 29. You must have those 9 consecutive months of full-time employment with the same employer in BC, which is obviously the employer that then will support your application throughout the whole process. And then you must have a demonstration of language proficiency. This is something that I didn't touch on before, because I know it would show up here. Here for the entry level, this is a requirement. Okay, you must have a CLB 4, so Canadian language benchmark level 4, which is relatively very easy. I would say it's like less than an intermediate level of either French or English, depends on the industry that you're working in and the employer you're working for, but you must have it. It's a requirement. For the other two, international students and a skilled worker, it's not a requirement. You don't need an English test, but of course, as we're going to see in the score calculation, if you have an English test, then you're going to get points. So for the most part, people choose to actually take the English test because it's going to help them anyways, especially regarding right now, as we're going to see as well, where the scores are relatively higher than they used to. So it's always good to get points from an area where you can control, right? Like where you can go take the test and based on the results, get those points. And the other thing that it is also like, specific for this stream, for this category, and I didn't mention earlier as well, because I wanted to bring it up here, is that for this particular category, since the occupations that you may use are unskilled or non-skilled, tier 4 or 5, you cannot combine the federal stage of this process for getting permanent resident status with express entry, okay? That's not a possibility with the entry level. If you don't, I'm just going to mention it now, like express entry only deals with occupations that are skilled. So level 0, 1, 2, 3. Anything that is 4 or 5 it's not compatible with express entry, let's say. So in the other two categories, a skilled worker and international student, you can either do it the regular way, non-express entry, or you can combine it if you qualify for one of the streams of express entry. You can combine the BC-PNP and express entry when you do the federal side of all this. For this particular category of semi-skilled and entry level, you can do that, okay? You only have to do the PR side of this, like the federal stage of this, will have to do non-express entry. And you might be wondering what's the difference. Okay, express entry, the processing times are probably almost half of what it would be in a non-express category, okay? So we're talking about like maybe 5 to 6 months for express entry, compared to 12 to 15 months in non-express entry, okay? So if you're a skilled worker or international student, you can choose depending whether you qualify for express entry or not. If you're in this one, you can't. So you have to do it the regular way, which is the longer way, okay? But at least, I mean, the end result of both of them is the same status, is permanent resident status anyway. So like, even though it's a longer process, you're going to get to the same outcome, the same final end. So I think at the end of the day, it's still worth it. Perfect. So I think what we're going to touch last is just, like a mention of what the tech stream is. And then we're just going to jump into the calculation of the score, and we can finish this. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, like this is not a specific category. So when you hear, oh, the tech stream, it's a stream, as the name says it. It's like a subgroup within the category of a skilled worker. So if you are going to do the tech, you're still going to be considered a skilled worker. And with that, you're going to have to meet all the eligibility criteria for that category. But the people who work in tech, because the government of BC is very focused on this particular occupations, they're high demand occupations, and also it's not just, when we say tech, it's not just people who work in IT or engineers. I mean, like there are people who work in the film industry. There are people who work as technicians for other kind of, pharmaceutical technicians, or people who work in optometry, that kind of thing, right? Tech is not necessarily information technology. It's like many other areas. Obviously, there is a very specific list of the occupations that qualify, that are eligible for this particular stream. But what is the main difference here? So not only you need to have an occupation in one of those specific positions, but at the same time, you need to one thing that is a little bit easier than in the skilled worker is that you don't need to have an indeterminate job offer. Okay, so the employment offer can be a contract of up to 1 year. Okay, so minimum you must have 1 year, but it doesn't have to be something completely indeterminate like it would be in the case of the common skilled worker. Okay, so that's one advantage for the tech. And the other advantage is that, as I always like to call it, they just give red carpet service for these people, because they just want to create want to make BC as a tech hub, okay, in Canada and in North America in general. So they just want to give this, advantages for people to feel tempted, feel, attracted to go to BC. So what is the main advantage of this? Processing times. Processing times normally for the BC-PNP, once the application is submitted, it ends up being between 2 and 3 months. But for the tech, it is 2 to 3 weeks, okay? And I've seen some cases where people get an approval in 1 week. So there is a huge advantage in that sense for people who have this particular occupation, and they can, fast forward everything, because the moment that you receive your nomination from the province, you can move ahead. And given the profile of people who work in this industry, in the technology industry, most of them also qualify for express entry. So they combine the BC-PNP skilled worker tech stream with express entry when they do the federal side of this, and they end up having their PR status in Canada in some cases I've seen with my own 2 eyes in less than 6 months. Okay, so it's a fast forward pace for them to actually not only take advantage of this tech hub in BC, also good salaries in the industry, but as well like the possibility of becoming a PR in the country very easily and very fast. So that's a big advantage. It's something really important, and I think for people it's very tempting. Like it has become something very popular for people who have one of those occupations, of course, and who can fulfill the duties of any of those occupations. And it's something that has grown exponentially, particularly in the last years. Another advantage here as well, and we're going to touch on that when we see the calculation of the score, is that because the government wants these people to actually transition to PR through the BC-PNP tech, the scores, or like I should say the actual score that is required for an invitation to apply under this category is relatively, or I would say like enough, low enough so that they will receive that invitation. Okay, so while, for example, regular skilled worker is in the 110s right now, 110, for this category is 90, is 90. Okay, so obviously, like these people with good salary, skilled positions, etc., they tend to have like relatively high scores. So like a 90 like cutoff would not be a challenge for them. Okay, so they will receive that invitation to apply, move forward with the application, and become PRs relatively easily. Okay. Okay. I think, and this is just an explanation of what I was saying before between, whether you do it in the non-express entry or the express entry. As I said, if you qualify for express entry under the skilled worker or international student streams, you can use express entry to do the federal side of this whole application. All right, and that obviously the advantage is time. For the entry level and semi-skilled, that's not possible. So like if you're going with that, you have to stick with the non-express entry, which is the longer pathway. Okay. Perfect. I think we are ready for the calculation, but just before that, and I'm going to show you the profile, like a profile that we created from a client, a potential client, and we're going to like go with, I'm going to share with you how the calculation is done based on the score grid that the BC-PNP offers. But I just want to introduce to you first where the score comes from. Like there are specific areas or factors, if you will, where the score is accrued. So those 5 areas there, 5 factors there in red are the ones where the program actually gets the points from. So the work experience obviously is work experience related to the occupation in BC. That's what I was mentioning at the very beginning. It doesn't matter what experience qualified you to be in the stream. You must have related work experience in the job offer that you have in BC, so that it counts for points, okay? If it's unrelated, it doesn't. Then obviously the highest education level that you achieved, whether it's in Canada or outside Canada. One advantage here is that the BC-PNP does not request for an educational credential assessment, all right? The ECA, the most common one that many of you may have heard is WES, World Education Services. That equivalency is not required for the BC-PNP, okay? You can submit, obviously, your degree or your diploma. It has to be translated into English or French, but it can be just that diploma. You don't need the ECA, which is, different for express entry, that you require it necessarily. The other one, obviously, number 3 is salary in the occupation in BC. The higher you earn, the more points you will get, as you will see. It's expressed in dollars per hour. That's a change from how it used to be before the latest update in November last year. So it's a little bit of a, like some people they're getting fewer points than they used to, but those points are compensated with other things, which we're also going to touch on. Then the language proficiency, as I said, not mandatory for international students and skilled worker, but definitely for the entry level. But again, like if you have those points and the higher level you have, either in French or English, you will get more like a better score, like a higher score. So that obviously is an advantage. And then of course, the latest part is the region in BC, which it has become like a matter of debate. A lot of people say like, why are like they're not giving points for people who live in Vancouver and the greater Vancouver area? Well, the answer is very simple, and I think it's very transparent as well. Like the government just wants to push people away from the bigger agglomerations of population around the big cities. They just want to populate other areas in the province, like the Okanagan Valley that I was mentioning before, like Vancouver Island, and the up north as well. So I think it's a good strategy when the government just uses immigration to say, hey, like if you move to this place or the other place, we're just going to give you extra points, and that can actually, it's your ticket to getting an invitation in the BC-PNP and moving forward with PR. Something really important about. Yeah,
sorry. I actually had somebody ask me, what's the cost of living? Can people live in Canada with an income from an entry level position? Most families in Canada have two working adults. I think this is now the reality for most people all over the world. It's no secret that obviously every country is going through a recession and every country has inflation right now. So, I mean, there have been some financial impacts after COVID. That's not to say that it's still not a prospering country and people are still looking to migrate to Canada because of obviously all of the benefits that come with being here, right? Yes, you are going to pay taxes, and for some it would be considered high taxes, but you're seeing a benefit from this, from the roads to having access to healthcare, to your children being able to attend school, cost to you, to the subsidies that you get once you're a PR, etc. But to go back to your point, people that are wanting to start off, you do benefit from moving to places that are not as
Right.
congested as is Vancouver, Toronto, right? So there is a benefit to you as well. If you're
Mm-hmm.
moving in the outskirts, there's still going to be job opportunities, but the cost of living will be much, much less. So it's something to
Mm-hmm.
consider. I think it's actually something positive, and it's a win-win for both parties, both the
Mm-hmm.
the government, but also people that are coming to migrate here, because you're
Mm-hmm.
going to find yourself, well, less traffic, less people,
Right.
still the same
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, and cost of living will be much less.
You're right. And definitely like for people when they come to Canada, for those of you who have the chance to come, let's say with a temporary residence, like a work permit, let's say, and you can experience the marketplace in Canada, you will realize that even though sometimes like you have better, or like I shouldn't say better, you have more opportunities in the bigger cities, competence is also like really, really fierce and high. So I think when you start seeing like smaller areas, and it doesn't have to be like a tiny town in the middle of the prairies nowhere. You know what I mean? It can be like a medium-sized city that offers you things, but it's not like a 2 or 3 million people
Can
city
you
like
name
Vancouver or Toronto.
or not? Can you name the cities? I'm just having some
Yeah,
about the cities. So just
yeah,
if you
definitely. Like
can.
yeah, it can be Prince George, Prince Rupert in the north of BC. It can be Kelowna. It can be well, you have others like Nelson, Hope. You have some other ones that are a little bit like smaller, are like Penticton. That's a little bit smaller, but still like relatively medium size. You have there is another one that I can't remember, Salmon Arm, which is like a very nice city, very touristic as well. Revelstoke in BC, closer
Mhm.
to the border with Alberta. A lot like that corridor there, like Penticton, Kelowna, Salmon Arm, Revelstoke. It's
Kelowna,
like the
people
yeah,
mention
right.
they're
It's
asking
the
me for living.
BC
They're
properties.
asking me for living expenses. If I give people the
Hmm.
prices, it's going to scare them because you're going to do the conversion, and
Yeah,
obviously, I think
yeah.
what you have to realize is living expenses are going to depend on the size of your family, where you're
Hmm.
residing, your income. Keep in mind that you're spending dollars, but you're earning dollars as well, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
it'll be a bit different once you are here. It's feasible.
Hmm.
And obviously, as you have more experience, have more Canadian experience, are more settled in the country, your opportunities will be better and better, right? So that's what I
Right.
was trying to get at the beginning, that you might have to do what you don't want to for a certain period of
Hmm.
time to get to where you want. And I'll go back to like, I always give myself as an example. When I was a university student, I was working two jobs in order for me to pay
Hmm.
my university. I didn't want to be a cashier, and I definitely didn't want to sell phones. But I knew that
Hmm.
that wasn't the end, right? For me, that was
Right.
just to the end, and that's what I had to do
Hmm.
to pay my tuition. But I knew that once I graduated, my possibilities were going to be better. So that's where
Right.
we get at, and it's what most
Hmm.
immigrants go through. They may have to do
Hmm.
some jobs in order to gain that Canadian experience, to understand the labor market, to understand
Hmm.
exactly what it is like to work here. And once you have those skills and those qualifications, that's going to be the foundation to get you a better position. So I think that's what we're looking at.
Right.
Okay,
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, no, no. That's great input, Sandra. Thank you for bringing that up because I know, I mean, like we focus on the immigration side because like we're talking about that today. But obviously, like immigration has like a lot of different sides to life. Because like if you move to Canada, it's not just yeah, okay, how am I gonna stay? Fine, like that can be a main goal. But at the same time, it's like where do I go grocery shopping? Like where do I find jobs? Where do I send my kids to school? I mean, there are a lot of things, a lot of areas to life more than immigration and the chance to stay in Canada permanently. So I totally understand that, and I second what you were saying. Like I also had to work like entry level jobs because when you are new in a system, even though you can come with experience and education from your country, you're kind of like adjusting and getting to know the culture, the system, how everything works. You basically have to, make a name of yourself in a new society, and we all have to go through that. And I think it's it may look like not positive, but at the same time, it's a very humbling experience, and it teaches you a lot of things. So I think at the end of the day, like, you have to look at it positively, and it's the beginning of a much better future, right? Like something that is going to get better and better as time goes by, and you get experience, and you adjust, and you progress. So I think that's the whole message here. All right, so going back to the calculation, because I don't want to make this much more longer. I want to honor your time, guys, as well. So the score is based on those 5 factors that we just mentioned, and you're going to see it very practically now when I show you how to calculate it. But the thing that you have to understand here is that based on that, and based, of course, on your profile, you're going to get a certain number of points. Okay, let's say it's 100. Okay, that's what you get. That's your score. So like, what do you take that against? So what you have to compare that against is, what are the rounds of invitations that the program actually runs every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, the government of BC chooses a certain score for each category, and for people who have exactly that same score or above that score, they will receive an invitation to apply. Okay, so the system works basically on you creating a profile. You put yourself into a database, which is, they call it like being the pool of candidates, and you're there with that score, with your score. If you reach the number that they choose for that specific round of invitations, or if your score is above that, then they will send you an invitation to apply. Only if you get an invitation to apply, you can move forward. Okay, you can. They will invite you, and as they invite you, they will say, okay, you need to fill out all these forms with information, and you need to submit all these supporting documents from you and from the employer. That's the application stage of the BC-PNP. Once you send it, then they will assess it, and if everything's fine and you meet all the eligibility criteria and all the things are good with the employer and your job offer, then you will be approved and you will receive the nomination. Okay, so that's the mechanics, like the different steps of how this works. So that's why we need to calculate the score, so that we know whether in the next round of invitations you have a chance to be invited or not, depending on the category you are in. Okay, so we just created here a very general profile of someone who might be a candidate. Like it might look like yours, or yours might be different. Again, like if you want us to do what we're going to do now with your particular case, we'll gladly do it in a consultation. So let's take a look at this person. This is Jane Doe, obviously fictional, and she has education in BC. She got a master's in business administration, something very common. A lot of clients actually study that. She did it at a very recognized university that is in Vancouver. It's University Canada West. She also took her English test. It's the CELTIP test, which is Canadian English. For those of you who don't know that one, it's a very common, very good one actually. That you may explore if you're thinking about doing this. So this is something important that I want to clarify here as well. I incorporated there like the different results in the 4 areas of the exam, because that really defines the number of points you will get from your language area. How does it work? So you can see here that she got in speaking, she got a 9, in writing an 8, in this is speaking, writing, listening 9, and reading 9. Okay, so she has 3 9s and 1 8. What does the program takes for giving you the score? The lowest one. I mean, yeah, it sounds unfair, but that's how it is. So in this case, her level would be an 8. And as we're going to see now in the table, 8 to a level 8 corresponds a certain number of points. Okay. If you have French knowledge as well, that can give you extra points. We're going to see too. Then what is the employment that she has, the job offer that she has in BC. Right now, she's the bank branch manager, and that is a skill level. It's 0. As you can see here, it's 1 0 0 to 1. That's the tier or the NOC level for the occupation, and that's a level 0, which will be managerial. So it's good for a skilled worker. She has 12 months of experience full-time in BC, which is great, like extra points as well. She has like 4 to 5 related work experience outside Canada, which is also good. We're going to see it in a little bit. She gets $35 Canadian dollars per hour, which again, will give you better points. And she's currently located in Kelowna, which is one of the cities that I just mentioned that when Sandra asked. This is interior BC, okay? This is not the Vancouver area, and this is not like the Vancouver Island. It's like in the interior of the province, in the region called the Okanagan Valley, okay? So let me just stop sharing this, and I'm gonna change here and share very quickly with you the grid so that we can take a look at the actual, here we go, points. And let me know if you guys are seeing it. Or, yeah, you're seeing it right now, right? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay, so here is where everything comes into existence, okay, for the BC-PNP. So we're just going to be taking a look at numbers, and this is, you know, this is everything. Based on this, you will move forward or not. So going back to the example that we just saw, like this person has around 4, I mean, at least 4, but she has less than 5 years. So in this case, the program, the grade is telling us that she will get 16 points out of that, okay? So 60 points for the related work experience that she has either abroad or in Canada or a combination of both. Then in this same section, you can get extra points, additional points, as the government calls it. It's 1 year of directly related experience in Canada. That means that the experience we're counting can be in BC or not in BC, but still in Canada. So it can be in another province as well or territory, but it must have been gained in Canada, okay? Canada, definitely. It can also be BC, okay? So I don't want you to confuse it, but it has to be in the country. So, and the other thing is that it must be related, meaning it has to be practically under the same NOC or something very, very similar, okay? My example from the beginning, cook and admin cannot be. So in this case, if she's working as a branch manager at a bank, it has to be something related to that. And it has to be at the level of the NOC code that she has currently. So in this case, we can count those 10 points for that year of related work experience. And then she's currently working full-time for the BC employer in the position, in the specific occupation. So she will get another 10 points here. So in total, we will have 10 plus 10 and 16 points. We would have 36, if I'm not wrong. Yes, 36 points, okay? Total is 40, so she's getting close to the maximum that she could get. It's only that she doesn't have 5 or more years. But so far, just stay with that number in your head. I'm gonna show you like a recap of this at the end, but right now we have 36 points in that regard for work experience. This is like, you know, explanation, and then we go to the second chart where it basically gives you points for education. So she got a master's degree. A master's degree in that sense, for her case in particular, is like the highest education level that she has. So it would be 22 points. However, in that particular regard, I think, you know, it's interesting that you can have education in BC, which, you know, gives you a certain number of points and also extra points for studying in BC. We're going to see it right now. But let's say, for example, that she did an associate degree, right? Like she would have 5 points, but she did a bachelor's in her country, okay? So she got 15 points for that. She doesn't have to use like the education in BC just because it's education in BC, if it has like it has fewer points than what she has from abroad. You know what I mean? So you can still present the fact that you have a bachelor's in your own country and get the 15 points, and then you get extra 8 points because you studied in BC. Okay, but it doesn't have to be, oh no, because I studied this level in BC, then I get those points, and whatever I have from before doesn't count. No, you can combine your education in or abroad in your country if it's higher from what you got in BC, and then benefit from the points of studying in BC, because at the end of the day, you still studied in BC and you have a diploma to prove it. So that's a clarification that is very important. So in her case, though, like it is the highest, so it would be 22 points for a master's degree and 8 points for education in BC. Okay, so 30 points in total there. All right, so this is just a list of like designations, professional designations. We're not gonna like stop here because this applies to other kind of specific occupations that are like they are. You need to qualify and you're regulated basically. So you have to show to a college that you have the specific license, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't apply to the case that we're looking at now. So we're just jumping into the level of language proficiency that she has. So as I was explaining to you before, she has 3 9s and 1 8. And unfortunately, the lowest mark in one of the 4 areas of the proficiency language test, that's the one that defines the specific number of points that you will get. So in her case, she got 999 and an 8. So the 8 will define it and it will give her 25 points. Okay. If she would have got all 9s or even more than 9, because it can go all the way up to 12, she would have got 30. But let's say she would have got like the 3 9s and 1 6, then she would only have got 15. You know what I mean? So always the lowest is the one that defines this. Okay. So it would be 25 in her case. She has no French proficiency, so she wouldn't be able to get those extra 10 points. But for some of you who come from, like the Francophonie, like the French-speaking countries, you can definitely take advantage of it, right? Like combining both languages, and it can give you extra points. So 25 there. And then salary, I think we said something about $35 an hour. As you can see, these brackets here, I don't want to go, like too slow, but I just want to stop right here to show you like this bracket, 40 to 40.99, that's per hour. Okay. So, like a $35 an hour is considered to be a relatively like medium high, like salary for Canada right now. So 35 is reasonable and it will give you 20 points, right? But if you go down, for example, to, I don't know, 25, 23, 20, like those ones don't give you as many points. And the thing about the salary, even though like it has to be at the level where, like most people in that occupation earn, it has to be, equitable. It has to be like fair, I would say. At the same time, it's difficult to really like gain many points or more points from this area unless you have like a very significant increase in your salary. Okay. So in order, for example, to move from 10 points to 20 points, we're moving like $10 an hour, which can be, like a very big jump in a salary. So my recommendation and like what I see most of the time with clients is that this is not an area where you can like scavenge for many, many points if you're missing points. Okay. It will be other areas, not so much about this, but let's just keep with what we were doing. So in this case, like 35 an hour would be 20 points. And then finally, I think we have area in BC, and I'm just going to show you the chart here, and then I'm going to go back to explain you a little bit better about this. So this is what I was mentioning earlier of what the government actually does. The government just pushes people away from the cities. So as I was saying, Metro Vancouver and all its area, like the many cities that are around the Vancouver area, it's a 0 point. Like you won't get anything. Very specific cities which are close to Vancouver, but not exactly in the metro area of Vancouver, like Squamish, Abbotsford, Agassiz, Mission, and Chilliwack. This one's get 5 points. And all the rest of the province gets 15. You know what I mean? When I was saying like the government wants people out there, okay, this is it. Like they just want you out of those, very conglomerated and very congested areas where most people want to live because, Vancouver is pretty, you have the mountains and the sea and everybody just wants to be there. It's just like, the first place that you land in BC, probably is Vancouver Airport. So where people have the tendency to remain there, but the government is trying to move them to other areas to develop those areas. So if you're outside, like it is the case of our candidate here, she would get 15 points. Okay, she's in Kelowna. Kelowna is in the Okanagan Valley, as I said before. It would be 15 points. But on top of that, the government gives you also additional points, which are regional experience or what is called regional alumni. So if you studied in BC or if you have worked in BC at least for 1 year, like it is her case, and I'm going to show you right here, the regional experience, to qualify, you need to have at least 1 year of full-time or equivalent part-time paid employment, which is the case of our applicant here. And you must have gained that experience in areas 2 or 3. So anything outside the Vancouver metro area. And that experience should have been gained in the last 5 years, right? Within the last 5 years. So in this case, it would apply to her. And likewise, she could get, for example, the points for original alumni because you must have graduated from a public BC post-secondary institution. That's what I was saying before. You have to check which institutions qualify for this when you're studying in BC. And that institution must have been located outside the Vancouver metro area, and you should have attended that specific institution while you were residing outside the Vancouver metro area. So in this particular example we're doing, it wouldn't apply to her because she studied at University of Canada West, which is in Vancouver, so it wouldn't be the case. But the last requirement for this is you must do it within the 3 years prior to registering in the BC-PNP. So it kind of aligns with that requirement in the international student stream that says that you must submit the application within 3 years from your graduation. So it's kind of aligned there. So for people, let's say, for example, who study in interior BC, this would be a very strategic way of earning, gaining 10 extra points, okay, for studying in BC and doing it within the 3 years from graduation. Something important here as well is that you can have regional experience and alumni points at combined. So you won't get 10 and 10. The maximum is 10 only for additional points. So either you get them from the experience or from having studied in that particular place outside the Metro Vancouver area, but you can get both. So the combination here maximum gives you 25, which is her case because of the area 3 and the regional experience in our example, okay? So all that, I know it's a lot of information, but all that basically makes up her score. So I just want to go back. If you give me 1 second here, I just want to stop sharing this. Okay, let me go back here. I don't want to confuse you guys, but I know I just want to show you the summary of this. Stop screen and let me go and share my other screen again, which is this. Okay, perfect. So here, as I was saying, we just did all the calculation just now in the points, and if you put all that together, the summary gives her 129 points, which is right now, and I want to put you in context. This is a very good score. Why? Because in the latest round of invitations, which happened October the 17th, you had the scores for each one of the streams, each one of the categories in blue there. So skilled worker required at least 119 points, international student 113 points, and the entry level and semi-skill 91 points. What does that mean? It means that in her case, because she would be utilizing the skilled worker category, definitely she's above 111 points. So she would have received this specific invitation to apply. And with that invitation, she would have been able to move forward, do the application, submit it, and then wait for processing from the BC-PNP. Eventually, she will get approved and nominated. And with that, she will then go on to the second stage, apply for PR at the federal level, and become a permanent resident in Canada. Okay, this is just an illustration. It's a simulation of the calculation of the points. Then obviously, as I was saying to you, what happens if you do this thing, this accrual of the points, and you don't get to 111 at least, which was the latest round of invitation? What happens? You have to start seeing how you can improve that score, right? Obviously, for a lot of people, it could be that you still don't have 12 months of related work experience in Canada. So that's something you can look forward to, just waiting for those 12 months until you can get those 10 extra points here, right? For example, if you didn't study in BC, you might think of doing something that might give you these 8 extra points for having completed a degree in BC. Language is one of the easiest and fastest because you can always prepare better and take the exam, the English test or the French test again, and get a better level, and with that level, more points. And obviously, one of the ones that I've been discussing with my clients a lot lately is consider just moving outside of the bigger cities in BC, go into the island, go up north, go into the interior of the province, but just try to secure an offer of employment that is in one of these areas that just by being there, by having an employment there, you just get 15 points just for that. And if you combine that with the experience and the regional experience, you have 20 extra points. So all in all, you just have to be strategic in the way that you prepare for this. But I think the crucial point here is understanding how the system works, which I hope you have a better idea now. And then if you're really serious about doing this program, I think like one of the greatest investment that you can do is having a consultation with us so that you can understand exactly where your points are coming from and how that score can be improved. Because if you do that, then you can then take like informed decisions on how to move forward so that by a certain time, a certain date, you will know that you will have the score or approximately the score you need in order to be invited. And I think that's crucial, all right? Because that's the only way to really move forward and you ultimately get what you need or what you want, which is permanent residence status in Canada. So I hope,
to conclude, I just want people to know that when you say you specialize in this, you've been, how many applications? Obviously, you probably just give us in the number of applications. I really want people to understand that this is a program that you know very well, and that in order to maximize your possibilities of getting an invitation from the province or nominated from the province, that you need to make sure that you're checking off all the boxes, have someone really assess your case, understand whether or not you meet the requirements at the moment, and how, like you said, how can I better my chances in getting selected, right? Whether it's bettering my English score, learning French, moving elsewhere, perhaps studying in Canada. So I think it's important because I've had a lot of questions regarding, hey, I'm an engineer in my home country, can I apply? Or I'm an ECE, can I apply? Or I think for those cases, it's very important that you actually log into our website. So you're going to go into Velosa Immigration, VELOSA immigration.com. You'll see it in Spanish, but also in English. So you'll be able to look for Hernan. You can actually book a consultation with him, and he will assess your case and let you know whether or not you meet the requirements at the moment, or what can you do to maximize your opportunities. Now, we assess people not only in BC. If you're interested in other province, I've had somebody ask me regarding the New Brunswick. Yes, we've worked with people in New Brunswick, in the Atlantic, Nova Scotia. So keep in mind that all provinces have PNP. So we could perhaps look at other provinces if that's what you're interested in. And we also work with students. So if you're looking to study in Canada as a way to become TR to PR, so you're looking to gain permanent residence through education, it's a great way for people to become permanent residents when you find that you can't find a job, or when you find that perhaps you don't meet the criteria for express entry. People start looking at studying in Canada as a way to become permanent residents. So we actually have an education agency that we work with that will help you in finding the right program and processing your student visa. So if that's something that you're interested in as well, you can always send us an email, but you can definitely check our website, look at our services, and book an appointment. Everybody that's attended, you'll actually receive an email letting you know, thanking you for your time. Obviously, you've taken time out of your day to be here with us. So I really appreciate that. This is one move to making sure that you meet your goal. So I always tell my clients, if you put a date to your dreams, then it becomes a goal, right? So you want to make sure that you're taking the steps to prepare yourself to put forward an application, but you can book us through our website. You'll get an email, and this will be saved on our YouTube. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you'll find content regarding immigrating Canada. I don't know if you want to say anything else to conclude, but Hernan, thank you very much. It was very insightful. I've had a lot of people asking questions, and I'm sure that they will be booking with you because you've been doing this for quite some time now, and you're very good at what you do. So you can look at our reviews on Google. People obviously have questions in regards to whether or not it's reputable. Just to kind of finalize, since we did mention that we don't assist people in finding work, what we do is if you were to find a job offer, we can validate the job offer, meaning we can verify if the job offer is actually legitimate. We've sat with a lot of employers and discussed with them, hey, this is what you would need in order to hire someone from overseas. So we can assist you with all legal matters if that's something that you're interested in. So I'll let you conclude, Hernan, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, I think just going back to what you asked me at the beginning, I think I've ever since I started practicing like more than 3 years ago, I was involved in the BC-PNP. So I lost track of the number of applications that I have, helped people with, but it has to be more than 100, definitely, and in different, like every stream, basically every category. So I think in that sense, I feel very confident that I know how to give you like the best assessment of your profile, and to really, as you were saying, Sandra, as well, I think it's not just like going for the score, which is the first step and understanding what the score is, but based on that, how we can work together to improve it. Because it's a matter of like saying, okay, if it's better for you to study, let's say, what are the opportunities of you to study different programs in different parts of BC and getting exactly what you want, because you have to combine that as well with your career goals as well. And together with that, you're getting extra points for the BC-PNP. Same thing with finding a job. As you mentioned, we don't do like actually, like we don't find a job for you, but we can make sure that you are in the right path to getting the kind of a job offer that you need for this. Learning English or perfectioning your English or your French, all those things are key things in order for you to succeed in the program. And there are things that definitely we can evaluate. I can evaluate personally in a consultation, and we can guide you with. I just want to answer one other question that I just saw in the chat right now. For people who are abroad, who are outside Canada, and who obviously like don't have maybe a job offer right now. So it's still possible for you to do the BC-PNP. Like, you don't have to be working in BC in order to do the BC-PNP. You can do it from abroad. The only difference there is that it's an extra requirement for the employer to justify that they did every effort that was within their reach to find someone locally. Okay, so they have to post an ad and basically say, we have posted this, but we haven't found the ideal candidate within the Canadian labor market, or BC in this case labor market, and then we're offering this to this foreign national. So it's still possible, it's still doable. Again, those are all things we can discuss in the consultation and give you a better understanding of what is the best move for you to do moving forward, so that you can actually get to where you need to get on time, and you don't waste time, and you just take advantage of every opportunity. So once again, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for choosing to be here. I know it's a lot of information, so I just, I'll leave you now for you to digest all that. But we're always available, and it will be a pleasure for me, for Sandra, for the whole team to help you along in this journey to become PR in Canada through the BC-PNP or any other program that you may be interested in. Okay, so I think that's everything for now. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.